Good morning and happy day one of Financial Fitness. I wanted to kick off the series by just explaining where Drew and I were when we got started and just encourage you that no matter what your situation, you can get started on the right direction too. And not to compare yourself or your beginning to somebody else's middle. So we were married in 2012 and we probably had separate bank accounts for 3 years. We handled our household expenses like roommates. So I would pay like all of our bills, our rent, our utilities, everything, and he would just cut me a check because that's kind of how we did roommate things. He had his money and I had mine, so he had his bank account and I had my bank account, and we just kind of kept it like that. Sorry, bug. So about 2 years into our marriage, after the initial shock of like moving to Cawker City weared off, I finally started to realize that him and I were just making really good money, but we weren't really like doing anything with it. We were living in a super low expense area. The living costs in Cawker City are super low. I mean, at the time, I think our rent was like $220. Like, it was so cheap. And we weren't really doing anything productive financially. We were just kind of living and not really being intentional at all. Neither one of us really knew how much student loan debt we even had. We just knew how much the monthly payments were every month. And like I said, he paid his, I paid mine. I probably didn't know how much he was paying per month on his student loans. I just knew how much I was paying, and it wasn't all that much. So what I just started doing was tracking all of our expenses. So I started with mine because that was my bank account. I didn't at the time I felt like it wasn't my place, I think, to really ask him for that information or want to control his money. And so I just started with myself and I just started tracking my expenses. And I just did this on like a simple spreadsheet, and it was like hard because I had so many transactions going in and out. I was swiping my debit card. If I didn't think I had enough money in my checking account, I would swipe my credit card. And so I had all these expenses kind of going everywhere, and nothing was really consolidated. And finally, after a few months of me just tracking my own expenses and getting a handle on that and trying better for myself, I asked him, would you allow me to do this for you? And after a month of tracking our expenses together, I was like, how do two people spend over $700 a month on food? And I just said, babe, we've got to do something about this. This is ridiculous. And he was pretty appalled by it too. And I think the other thing was, it was half the month and he had spent, I think $60 at the convenience store and didn't even realize it. And I know those little things add up. And so that is where we started. I encourage you that if you haven't started anywhere, track your expenses and see where your money's going. Don't worry about a budget first off. I mean, budgets are really important, and we're going to get into that in this group. But if you don't know where your money's going out, you don't even know where to get started. And sometimes it's just so eye-opening to see those categories where you're like, holy shit, I had no idea I was spending that much money on that. And just trying to do better. And so the purpose of that is just tracking your stuff and trying to do better. So that's what I encourage you to do for at least a month or even just a week, and just see where your money's going and see where you can do better.